Hey y'all, I'm Leah.
And I'm Rachel.
We're two wives and a spark. As new parents and as an interracial couple, we're on a mission to connect with others and explore how race and politics influence so much for families like ours.
Yes, we believe intentional conversations are vehicles for change. So we're committed to learning in public and having real talk every step of the way.
And you know what? Maybe, just maybe one conversation at a time, we can make the world a better place.
I think so. So let's jump in, y'all.
We're back. Happy episode 26. I don't know. I haven't done that all season. I don't think I make it sound like we're at a concert.
Oh my goodness. Hello, beautiful people. We are happy to be back with you. This is going to be a little bit of a different episode.
It is. It is. We're going to bring in all the episodes from the season, but not the entirety of each episode.
Yeah, we are nearing the end of season 3. We have been on a journey, and it's been a beautiful season. It has been a full season of a lot of conversations, and we have made the decision to take a pause this summer and have just a moment to recalibrate and reconnect, and then we'll be back in the fall. So this is almost the last episode, second to last episode of the season. Yes. So we wanted to do something different as we close out season 3.
Yeah, let's do it.
So what are we doing?
We have a little mashup. I don't want to take credit like we did this mashup. Shout out to our producer, yes, who put together a mashup of all the answers to the question that we had on the podcast this season, which was the last question of each episode. But we asked families, if you could ask or tell parents anything, what would you want to tell them?
Yeah. What do you wish all parents would do more of? And we found the responses to be so just life-giving and inspiring. And so we thought, what if they were all in the same place, so that we could always come back to this when we need a little jolt of inspiration and just a reminder that it is actually the little things that people can do that makes such a huge difference,
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And just hearing people's responses, we themed them, and we'll come back and talk with y'all about just kind of some of our big takeaways and what sparked for us after you all have a chance to listen to all the answers from the season.
Yeah, so let's dig in. Y'all just sit back, enjoy these little moments, and then we'll come back with y'all here in a few minutes.
I would just like to see parents just love up on your kids. Because it's cliche, but hurt people. Just love on your babies. That's all you can do. Growing up, I can't ever clearly recall hearing my mom or dad say, I love you or I'm proud of you, but I knew they were. So it wasn't something that was lost to me. But I know she's pointed out, I make it a habit to tell Adonis, maybe not every day, but every other day, that I'm proud of him. Every night, I love you. Bunch of kisses before bed. I feel like kids retain these things. Just love on your babies, because they go to school happy. They're not bothering anybody else. They're thinking about Minecraft and snacks and when it's time to go play. So just love on your babies. Let them know that they're okay and they're good the way they are.
I think I just want all parents to know this whole parenthood game, life journey, is going to take all of you. You can't opt out of it. But it is a full body wholeness experience. So even when you don't feel like it, you still have to show up. But knowing that show up doesn't mean 100%. So it's hard. It's hard, and it's going to take every part of you, but you have to be open to it, because you have to be willing to realize that you're parenting yourself and you're actually not parenting your kid, which is a whole nother conversation that I'm all in that life right now. You have to realize that they're kids. You need to give them space to just be kids. You need to realize that everybody is operating at a place where they're just doing the best that they can in that moment. And all of that is wrapped up into everything that we do. And so I want all parents to know that we don't know everybody's whole story. We don't know everybody's life. And also we still have to show up and interact with each other and give everyone the benefit of the doubt. And holding on to that good to keep interacting, because when we decide and we write people off, then that's when that fragmentation of things occur. So I think that's what I want all parents to know.
And just do you, be yourself. I know it sounds like cliche or very simple, but being yourself sometimes can't be simple, but that's basically all you got to do, because there's no other way. Like, you don't want to stress yourself trying to impress or make somebody else happy. You gotta be yourself.
And maybe find someone who you look up to, like another couple, someone who inspires you. So that way you can see their life, envision yourself in it, and know that that's all the possibilities that they're going through, you can have, but also make those decisions to be that way. Because if you don't make any decisions to love, to be who you want to be, to have a family, to, go through a whole IVF procedure and have a baby, and, just do them, because the negative people are going to be there, whether you are in our community or whether you are not.
Mhm.
So that's never going to stop. Like, they're always going to come and hit you left or right. But you got to decide if I want to go through them or go through my own journey and let all the negative things that happen to me there, but still take those, learn from it, and keep moving, because those negative comments, negative things are not going to make me who I am today or who I am going to be tomorrow.
I would say lead with love. So signature on my email says lead with love. And I think it's because love is that defining emotion that for the most part is relatable to everyone, right? And I feel as though humans are at their best when they love. It comes from an altruistic place more often than not. And you make the best decisions that you've made in life when they're made with love in mind. And so if I were to say that I wish for anything from parents, it's to lead outwardly with the love you have for your kids when they're small, before they've decided that, they grow into someone you weren't expecting, before they have that definitive parting of ways where they're emerging independent of you. That love that everyone has for their child when they're small. I think if you could hold on to that and broadcast it out into the world, because that's where unconditional love is. It's the purest sense of the word. And I feel like if you were able to just have that level of acceptance and that level of patience and that level of kindness and that level of just pure altruism towards everyone, God damn, the world would be a really beautiful place.
I think in my line of work, advocacy is a huge thing. Like, right, as I'm always advocating on behalf of my patients, on, behalf of family members. And so I think if we just took a little bit more time out to advocate for the stranger, and of course, like leading with love, I think it kind of plays in with that too. I don't know, if you could risk something for someone else, like, what does that do to you?
I would wish they would teach their families, talk to your families, educate your families, from your kids to your parents to whoever. Bring stuff in from other cultures, from other family dynamics, from everything. Bring books, bring movies, bring just any kind of representation that you could bring into that is not your own.
Yeah.
Start implementing that into your family. Talk about that. Talk about it to your kids. There's way too many kids that still say to Mila, you can't have two moms. You have to have a dad. And I think that just goes to show how few families are truly having those conversations with kids. And that's something that I wish would change so much. Like, if I could help all the families everywhere, like, I would just be like, introduce things from different, like I said, different cultures, different races, different family makeups. All of those things are so crucial and so helpful with every single other family that is going to eventually encounter your family and your children, and the way they respond to us, to y'all, to anybody, and I think that's just the utmost importance.
So I really feel like seeing the world through our children's eyes is like so important, right? And to understand that, like, children don't have implicit biases, that they're not born with that. And I don't really feel like children are ever too young to start having important conversations with. us kind of modeling for our children love and inclusivity and not, putting labels on things for them, right?
I think, leading with love, right? With more families leading with acceptance and love and, the less judgment. Because kids, like Lauren said, are so just uninhibited, and if we follow sometimes their lead, I think that parents could learn a lot.
All right, y'all. So let's kind of unpack and talk through what we heard, what really stood out, what themes from those beautiful reflections really came to us.
Yeah. I think one of the overall themes I think you can hear in every episode, but also just in this question, is the power of love, right? And the power of accepting your children and accepting your community. Just the power of acceptance, I think, is a huge theme this season. And I think a time that we're just grappling with in our society currently is like truly the power of accepting human beings for who they are versus, trying to change people. So that stood out to me a lot this season. And I'll be carrying that with me throughout the summer, just like accepting, the moments we're in too, right? Like we have, as y'all know, a little one, and 1 week she might act one way and the next week is totally different, right? And just accepting the moments that we are in and accepting the personality and character that she's building is definitely something that I think is important.
Yeah. Something that stood out to me is in all the beautiful reflections, it's like everything everyone said, one could argue, is just so simple, right? Like lead with love on your babies, talk about all the ways families can look, just all the little things about love and showing love unconditionally. It sounds so simple, but in reality, to ask all parents to do that, we are watching unfold before our eyes how hard that actually is to hope that parents could show unconditional love and inclusive love and accepting love. And I just can't help but keep thinking about this idea that's been permeating through all the episodes, this idea that hurt people. And like, how do we even get here to where someone could be so hateful toward families like ours? And in reality, as a parent, it's hard for me to wrap my head around like why these requests or like hopes and ideas are so hard. So I'm just sitting with that, like in my heart, I feel like, yes, this is so beautiful. I feel so hopeful and I feel inspired. And then I get kind of brought down to reality when I think about where we're at as a country and how we just have yet to go a day without a mass shooting or like hurt, just extremely hurtful legislative sessions and bills across our country. Like how do we go from these words of wisdom to like actually seeing it in reality,
I think it starts in our homes, right? I think the values that we place in our homes and, in our families are very important, right? And when you were talking, and I appreciate you for bringing that up, because we can sometimes choose to stay in this very hopeful, positive lane to get through each day of like, our whole beings are under attack. Our families are under attack culturally and racially in this state. People of color and white folks are under attack, right? To be arguing against diversity, equity, inclusion is like, that's an attack on people's personal stories and experiences and humanity. And so I think it's, if we were to really sit with the amount of pain that is in this world and allow ourselves to just kind of live in it, I don't think we can move, right? I think it's harmful because it causes you to be stuck because it's so disheartening and so sad. And so I think, I choose to lean in, and not every day. Some days I am stuck. Some days I am just kind of like, this sucks and I hate it and I am sad and mad and miserable because it's that disheartening. But I think the question that you're asking really requires us to be intentional as human beings who are bringing little human beings into this world and thinking about what values we are teaching them.
Yeah.
Something that Kim said in her episode that I thought was really powerful and I've been sitting with is stand up for the stranger, right? This idea of, I don't know you and you don't know me, but I am you and you are me.
Yeah.
Your pain is my pain. Your love is my love.
Yeah.
And I pray that we can see that unfold in this country at some point.
Yeah.
And in that is our understanding that you as a human deserve to live and to be free.
Yeah.
I as a human deserve to live and be free.
Yeah.
And if we really were to think about, and we talked about this a lot in season 1, right? The history of this country, we've never lived to that, where we
Yeah.
see each other's humanity and we see the opportunity to say, just because you're different than me doesn't mean I should have power over you, right? Like,
Right.
and so we are trying to take apart and break that nature in this society, right?
Mhm.
That human understanding, that conditioning.
Mhm.
Thank you. I was like, there's a word I'm trying to find.
Mhm.
But that conditioning of like, because you are different, then I shall dominate because your differences are not as strong as mine, right?
Because I'm afraid.
Because I'm afraid of being,
take, my power being.
or for
Yeah.
that to go the other way. Like maybe
Yeah.
you're going to think you should dominate me. And like, we live in this world of fear,
Mhm.
and fear, unfortunately, is in the driver's seat of power.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to dismantle those things is going to require us to do the complete opposite, which is very hard when you're
Yeah.
fighting for your life.
Yeah.
To be kind to someone who is telling you that you shouldn't exist, to show love and to show a helping hand to the stranger that's telling you that your family shouldn't be able to be formed, right?
Mhm.
Like it is hard to take the nonviolent and positive route
Yeah.
when you're being faced with hatred and judgment. And so
Thank you for saying that. Because for me, it's like I'm reminded of Crystal and Scarlett's episode where they were talking about like how people are almost like emboldened on social media to share a lot of stuff, but like in person, I think that was also a theme that like a lot of folks have experienced hatred online, but not in person. And so I do wonder and think, like at the end of the day, if we were able to step away from the divisive mediums that are like the media and the social media and all the things that are pulling us apart, if we were able to take a step back from them, like I'm not saying everything, everything, go live under a box, but I'm thinking like, if we were able to have hope in humanity and those little micro moments, the human to human, like I'll open the door for you, I'll, listen to you, even though we may not see eye to eye, I will invest in humanity and kindness and compassion so that my child lives in a more compassionate world, right? It's like these little moments face to face and human to human that I think are really going to be the thing that make a big difference in this world, and actually holding space for some disagreements to exist and figuring out like, okay, what we're asking people to do, lead with love your babies, be unconditional, talk about just, hey, love makes a family. I think it's really not a big ask. It's not saying like anti this or anti that, but just talking to your kids about, hey, families can look different and let's have an explicit conversation. Kids are never too young to hear about differences and all the layers of difference, right? And so I think that there's an assumption under there that people have the skill and the comfort and the capacity to have new conversations. And so I think maybe having a little more grace and having more hope for places that communities come together, I don't know, like churches and schools and the community spaces. Like I think that there's got to be some way that we can give each other a little bit of the benefit of the doubt more openly, more consistently in places where we convene together. Maybe those little micro moments when people aren't, hiding behind the screen of an anonymous username, like maybe that's the stuff that's going to make a big difference. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think as you've been talking, and as you know, I kind of been studying some of this like digital world that we live in right now. And like, I think it is a both and, right? I think we have to get better at having a value system. I don't have to agree, right, with your choice, but I don't get to have power over your choice.
That's right.
Right. I don't have to be like, your choice is exactly what I want my choice to be, but I don't have to have power over your choice. And I think we're in a place right now where that is the big wave that's kind of coming at us. It's like, who's going to get to have the power over choosing for people? And no one should.
Right.
We should each have power to choose for ourselves.
Right.
And so I say that because I think what we're seeing in the digital world is that I may not have the, legislative power to make this law or whatever, but I have a power in my opinion. And so I'm going to put it out there that I disagree with X, Y, or Z. And it's like, you should have the power to disagree with me, but you don't need to have enough power to where you think I shouldn't exist.
Or the right. Yeah. You have a right to.
Yeah, you
to
have
speak
the
your-
right to speak. That's
your
your
truth,
experience. That's
yeah.
your truth. Maybe
Yeah.
you haven't, been around multiple people.
That's right.
Fine.
But to take rights from others.
But to then oppress me because I am choosing to stand in my truth,
yeah.
that's problematic,
And-
right? And
yeah.
like to then think I'm going to get on this platform and basically harass, right, you because I don't agree with your choice, that's problematic,
It's super
right?
problematic.
And I think
Yeah.
we have to not only be able to have a value system that shows kindness and love to the stranger in society, but we
Right.
also need it in our digital world because the
Yeah.
digital world ain't going nowhere. Like it's growing, it's
True.
getting stronger, it's getting bigger.
Yeah.
And we need to have better ethics around like how to share opinions, but how to also uphold this value system of kindness and empathy and love and care for others.
Yeah.
And we've never been good at that as a country.
Right.
And so
Yeah. And again, it's like it sounds simple, but it's so complex in actuality, like in the execution of it, because people, again, hurt people. There are a lot of people hurting in this world. And I know it's interesting because it's like this digital world, no one had it's all evolved before our eyes. So
Right.
no one's had kind of in the same way you have to have a driver's test to get a driver's license. No one's had that, like we haven't as a society had this level setting of like these skills and
Yeah.
competencies to
Yeah.
access this world. And I think it's because of that, everyone's just fumbling around in the dark. And so we're all doing what we know and care about. And when you feel isolated and you're in pain, then you're probably more likely to express that digitally. There's all these layers of it. And I think we could go down 1,000 rabbit holes with this conversation. But as I come back to the original point, like what are the themes we took away from our guests and the amazing humans that we got to talk with this season? I do think the answer is complex in actuality, like what we wish more parents would do. It's a big ask to ask people to kind of do their own work and do their own healing and put aside kind of all the influence of the divisive media to say, yeah, love makes a family. I can say that confidently to my child. And if they ask a follow-up question, it's okay for me to say, let me think about that and get back to you, right? Like, I think we just haven't had a lot of practice having these conversations for folks that are like, this is brand new for me. Like I don't have a schema for what this looks like because everybody around me is telling me that that's bad and that's not, that's subhuman or whatever the case. Like there's the dehumanization is a tactic, right?
Right.
And so where do we go from here? It's a lot.
It sounds, to your point, simple, right? But it is, I think, complex for people to just be able to name that what we're looking at is love. But for some people to see a same-sex couple and to name that as love is going to take rewiring, especially if you haven't seen it, right? And so I think that's why this season was really important to us because we understood the power of hearing people's stories and voices. And if we have a platform to be able to put those stories and voices out for people who maybe won't hear from a same-sex couple ever, right? Because that's not who's in their network or who they're around, or they're not putting themselves in different spaces, then this at least gives a chance to hear these stories and to be like, I believe that too. Or like, I had that same thought when that question was asked, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what brings us closer to our humanity. And that's right. I think we oftentimes can forget that just listening to someone that you may not think you have something in common with, you then realize like, oh yeah, I actually agree with that entire, or I would have thought the same thing, or like, that pizza is bomb, like whatever. It could be the smallest thing and it could be the biggest thing. So I think getting back to remembering that we very likely have more in common than we don't. And when people show sides of themselves that are so matter of fact. Like, I dislike this thing,
Yeah.
that there's something else underneath that.
Mhm.
And if we have the awareness to know, oh, okay, you're naming that you dislike that thing, to me, that just tells me that something makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Or that you don't really understand the complexity of whatever that thing is, or that human being, or whomever,
Mhm.
however you want to write that sentence. So I just think we have to get back to understanding what love looks like,
Yeah.
right? And knowing that it comes in different shapes, sizes, shades. And I think for some people, recognizing that love is not going to be exactly how you see it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I love you, right? That doesn't mean I can't love the relationship that I see with our friends who are not a same-sex couple, right? Like,
Yeah.
I can also love their love
Yeah.
in the same way that they can love our love. And so I think it's important, though, and this starts young, and this is why we're seeing in agencies of power, why they're trying to start so young with taking people's humanity out, right?
Yes.
Because
Book
if
bans.
children were to be able to just see without any words, actually,
Yeah.
like, oh, cool, those are two people holding hands, they're happy.
Yeah.
Oh, look, flower, right? Oh,
Yeah.
look, those are two people holding hands. Oh, look, a squirrel, right? Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't, words actually complicate it. The simplicity of it is what you're able to, what's in front of you.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the agencies of power continue to try to force more like ridiculous power laws into play, because they understand that. So it is our responsibility, I think, as constituents and as human beings, to continue to push back on that.
That's right. Yeah.
By exposing our children to different communities and different experiences and
Right.
different people.
Right. And just because, some majority red states are putting a lot more censorship and book bans and all the kind of anti-LGBTQ bills out there, there's over half the country that's not. And I think this conversation really highlights, like, every day I go through this cycle of like thinking really macro and getting really overwhelmed, and then thinking really micro and being like, okay, there's hope. And then thinking macro and thinking, how are we going to reach the, this, that, and the other. And then I think, wait, no, the sphere of influence right now is this small, let's focus on this step. The mission of Spark from the beginning is one conversation at a time. We can make the world better.
Yeah.
One micro moment can lead to macro change. And so I think about this moment that we're in, and this, as we kind of wrap up this episode and think about our takeaways, I really do think this conversation has helped me see it's not about, like, if we dedicate all of our time and energy to trying to reach the person on the other end of the spectrum that's like so deeply in their beliefs that we are not human, like,
Right.
that's maybe not the best use of energy.
Yeah.
Maybe if we spend our time thinking about folks that are, right on the fence, like I have a cousin who's in the LGBTQIA plus community, or I'm curious and I'm trying to figure out where I stand. I'm a little bit open, but confused. And like, if we focus our energy on folks who have some openness and some, curiosity, I think there is hope there to me. Like, when we reimagine how we're using our time and how we're thinking about, it's not about converting or trying to bring people over here. It's just like, hey, can we have a little bit more open-mindedness, and where are there pockets for these conversations to have a real impact? And that's what gives me hope, is when I think about folks who are like, okay, yeah, I'm in the same preschool, or drop off line, or I'm in the same, we go to the same library class and I see you every week, and I'm open to having that conversation. Like, that's where I think we start to change the world, is like, when we take our love and our values from our homes and start to just slowly begin to have these conversations and building trust and connectedness, and building upon, like you said, finding where we have in common, because we all, do dishes at night. Most of us, we all have to figure out how to, when the rain is coming, we're all trying to figure out the best route to avoid the puddle. Like, we all do things that are emblematic of, like, we're trying to take care of our kids, in the best we can. And so if we just start to expand our understanding of that, I think the world will get better.
Yeah, I'll wrap by saying, to that point, I think the reason you just hit it so well, like, where it's like every state is not actually in this like censorship moment. But I think the reason it feels so loud to us is because we're obviously in a state that is. But
Yeah.
I think second to that is, it is when you believe, because what you're surrounded by, that you are the only one going through something, you then can create a narrative that that's what it is, right?
Mhm.
So it goes back to, we also have to continue to not only follow what's happening in our state, but to continue to give ourselves hope, look outside of what's happening, to see the bigger picture, to understand like we are across this world moving in a way that does highlight humanity for all. And
Yes.
but it is very hard to do that if you only stay looking at, the state you're in, and if the state you're in is on fire, you're trying to put that fire out first. So I can see how both things can happen. But I think it is, to your point, like when we're raising kids, at the end of the day, kids, I think, show the best versions of our humanity, right? They love,
They're sponges.
they are sponges. They are in the whatever moment they are in. It's not an extra thought. It's like, oh, I want to roll on the floor. I'm rolling on the floor. Oh, I want to eat breakfast. I'm eating breakfast. Like it is truly, they are just in the moment, right?
Yeah.
And if we can all get back to our inner kid and be in the moment of just appreciating what's around us and enjoying what's around us, and I think we can do a lot of healing.
Well, that I had no idea where this conversation was going to go, but
Me
I
neither,
did
and I
appreciate it.
wonder if we'll re-listen to it, but
It was helpful to just process what this last question sparks for us, because it is it's a lot.
authentic, yeah.
It was just a real conversation that we would have at our dinner table. So I hope that you all share with us what it sparked for you, and what this conversation sparked for you, and where what you're grappling with, and where you're at with, like, how do we make progress as a people? Because we are at a very pivotal time. I mean, let's be real. This is, the week of April 17th, 18th, 19th. I can't remember when this is going to drop, but it's this week, right? That reproductive rights is on the line.
Yeah.
A lot of legislation is happening right now. And so it's a both and for us. Like, we have to continue to stay vigilant and active and using our voice where we can. And at the same time, also trusting that, like, one conversation at a time, in these micro small ways, we can make a bigger difference. The thing that gives me hope is Gen Z right now. These next generations underneath us that are fighting for change, and that are just increasingly more and more diverse, and so aware of what we need as a people. So I would say, let's just keep fighting for love in every way that looks. Yeah. All right, y'all. Well, we look forward to reconnecting here in a couple of weeks for our final episode of the season. And again, just huge appreciations to every one of our guests this season. It's been such a joy and such a gift.
Such a joy. We really appreciate the time and the energy and the words and the messages and the love that y'all
Thanks for
gave
joining
our
us today,
audience
y'all.
this season.
We'd love to stay connected on
until next
Instagram
time.
and Facebook, so you can
Sending
find
you
us
love
at 2
and-
Wives and a Spark, all spelled out.
If you enjoyed today's episode, share it with a friend so we can keep the sparks of connection going. If you want access to our episodes as soon as they drop, click that subscribe button. Every rating and review helps others find us, so thank you in advance for letting us know what you think. I'm Leah.
And I'm Rachel.
Thank you for listening to Two Wives and a Spark.